Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a very, very special broadcast here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. This is called The Spirit World Live, and this is the first time we've ever done anything like this before. And if you are listening anywhere across the Guadalupe Radio Network right now, we welcome you, and we are broadcasting live and in person in Dallas, Texas, at Jesuit College Preparatory School in the Terry Center. And we have with us not only the wonderful hosts of the Spirit World Live, Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly, but we also have a studio audience of about 400 people here in Dallas, and we're going to ask them to make some noise. Thank you so much. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce Debbie and Adam, and we're also going to go to questions that are being asked right here in the Terry Center of these wonderful people who have come here to be with us. And for those of you listening, we mentioned this a couple of times before we got started, but today is the 101st birthday of Mother Angelica. And so we await her hopeful canonization one day. And also, I just want to say, maybe you're listening and it's 7 or 8 o'clock at night, depending on where you are, and you're like, the Spirit World Live, I haven't heard of this show before. Well, it is a Guadalupe Radio Network produced program, and it airs 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, across not only the Guadalupe Radio Network, but the entire EWTN radio network, and it's produced by the GRN, and we're so very proud of it. And so if you enjoy what you're going to hear over the next hour or so, tune in every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern Time for the Spirit World Live. And I am going to, with no further ado, just say, well, first of all, my name is Dave Palmer, and I serve as the Executive Director of the North Texas station of the Guadalupe Radio Network. And it's such an honor to see so many of you North Texans here in person, and so many people also listening across the Guadalupe Radio Network. And I want to, with no further ado, first of all, thank Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly for being here in Dallas for this live show, the first time you guys have ever done this before. And this is going to be such an anointed evening, so thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you, Dave. You've done such a great job, and I love the outfit.
The people here in Dallas can see this, but I'm dressed up like a 1950s radio guy because we wanted to kind of have the old kind of classic golden age of radio, because I think that's such a great kind of era of radio. And like I said before, they all seem to always talk like this, didn't they? The golden age of radio. And so a few of us, like Sean, are dressed in fedoras and the suspenders, and so we're bringing back the the age of radio. So so thanks for noticing, by the way.
Yes, very nice. And Sean and Sissel, everybody's all dressed up. It looks great. Adam and I feel so humbled, so honored to be here. 400, this is amazing, you guys. Thank you so much for embracing the Spirit World. So yes, we do have the show on Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, and then we're also on The Next Right Thing, Monday through Friday on Morning Joy, morning show on Guadalupe Radio Network, and it's actually an extension of the Spirit World, and we'll get into why that came to be, why we feel it's so necessary right now. But Adam and I, we're just so grateful to God to be able to have gotten here. We had a lot of resistance getting here with various things, plane flights and all sorts of things. But we just know, well, Adam always says, if the demons don't like it, then just keep going because you're doing the right thing. Just keep doing for God and stay focused. So we're trying to do that, and I want to turn it over to Adam just to kind of set the stage of why we wanted to be on location with you guys and do this wonderful broadcast for Guadalupe Radio Network. And those of you that came up to me personally saying that you listened to Take Two, thank you so much. I will tell Jerry hello, and it's Jerry Usher is the one who's responsible for bringing the two of us together. So you can thank Jerry for that. He's pretty amazing in the radio world. But Adam, if you want to start with why we are doing the Spirit World.
Yeah, so thank you for coming, everybody, and thank you to those that are listening. This is all Deb's idea, and she's the captain of the show. I'm the swabby. That's a little inside information maybe you didn't know. You know, the reason I feel strongly about this, oh, are we getting feedback? The reason I feel strongly about this is in our culture right now, we've kind of stopped passing on the faith to a large extent, or a lot of people are not picking up the faith if people are trying to pass it to them. So young people going to church less, getting less catechesis, less education. And that's not the critical part. The critical part is the rest of the society is willing to hand people supposed answers to their spiritual questions and the needs in their heart, which is for God, and often celebrates and promotes the very things that the Christian faith understands are dangerous. And so the point of doing some work in the media is to head off the cases before they become the serious cases we see in the exorcism world. Now, possession's rare, but it does happen, and we see a lot of oppression cases that come from playing with ghost hunting, from playing with the occult, from playing with Wicca, from playing with Reiki, from playing around with yoga. I've seen real cases from all of these things. And so this is an opportunity to hopefully provide some education that maybe people haven't gotten, or if they're not going to church, they're not going to hear it through their church. So, you know, that's the basic goal, and I think there's some providence in it, and I think God seems to be wanting this to happen because of all the doors that have opened and that it seems to be going well. So those are my thoughts.
Very good. Well, you all ready to go to questions? Okay,
Ready.
Once again, we have over to our left the people who have lined up, and we're going to go to Sean Rice, and he is going to let these good people ask their questions live on the radio. And also, as you can see on the screen here, we are on YouTube also, okay? So we are on video on YouTube, so this is very exciting. So, all right, let's have our first question on Spirit World Live.
Okay. This question is for Adam. How did you get into demonology?
Okay, so the question is, how did I get involved in all this strange stuff, right? Long story, the CliffsNotes version is it started in graduate research in advanced signal processing of brain waves and studying structure and function of the brain in graduate school. I was curious whether any of these strange experiences were genuine spiritual phenomenon or an artifact of the brain, because I had seen that even in a healthy brain with no mental illness, under hypnosis, if a person's hypnotizable, you can induce hallucinations that to the person are completely real. So I knew that the brain was capable of making false experiences that subjectively are completely real. And so I had that question, are these odd things just waking dreams, etc.? And that led me to finding a way to go out and interview people myself directly, because I had some clinical training at the time in terms of diagnostic interviews. And by providence, I met some specialized clergy. I stumbled across a possessed person in one of the first cases I ever went on, which was a house case to interview people that said they were having strange experiences in their house. And I met an exorcist, which back in those days there was very few in the country, and the ball started rolling, and it hasn't stopped. And so for some reason, even as a lay person, I'm still involved in the sense that the bishops continue to ask me to teach and train, and of course you say yes.
So hi, my name is Dana. I'm a Catholic therapist. I'm asking this on behalf of my clients. How important is forgiveness in avoiding spiritual attacks?
So the question is, how important is forgiveness in avoiding spiritual attacks? Critical. So sin is a coin with two sides. The one side is my sins, of which I need to repent. The other side of the coin is other people's sins that have affected me that I have not forgiven. Both basically equally give traction for evil spirits to stay in our lives and even do these extraordinary things to us. Now, I'm not saying if you have unforgiveness, you're going to be possessed. It's still a rare thing, and you have to be basically involved in black magic, pretty serious stuff to end up in that kind of trouble. But by pulling the curtain back in that extreme situation, you see how all this works. And it's right in the Our Father. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us. So it's equally important to repentance in terms of that relationship with God, of staying committed to God and rejecting sin. We have to reject our sin, but we have to forgive the sins of others.
And isn't it, I got to turn this back on. Isn't it true that a lot of saints have stated that people spend a lot of quote unquote time in purgatory for unforgiveness, for bringing that over to the other side?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And, that's private revelation, but there's a lot of it. And so, yeah, it's really important, guys. Confession, incredibly important, critical. Stay in a state of grace, avoid mortal sin, but work on forgiveness. And, you can do it in a letter. Even if somebody's long gone, sometimes writing it out in a letter can be a powerful thing for processing it. Don't do, if it's a toxic relationship, you don't feel like you have to engage with the person and interact with them. But find it in your own heart to forgive them, even if you don't interact with them.
Well, and you've said this on many shows. Remember, you said forgiveness can be really hard if somebody has really wounded you deeply, and it's really tough to be able to fully forgive them, and you can not really forget what happened, but forgive. So you do what you can, and with a good effort, with a good intention, and you ask Jesus to step in and fill in the rest, and he does, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And we do that a lot in our sessions in the exorcism world, where a person needs to forgive and they say, I'm so wounded, I can't really let that go. And we ask them to ask Jesus to make up the rest. And it seems to, quote unquote, work in the sense that the demon then admits it no longer has a hold on the person.
Hi, my name is Jane, longtime listener, first-time caller. So, is it more common for demons to inhabit people or animals or like objects, like a house?
Okay, so the question is it more common for them to inhabit people, animals, objects, homes? The most common is locations, which the church calls a demonic infestation. That's when they get rights to do extraordinary things in a place or on land. So it's not that they're not necessarily harassing one person or an animal. They're just rattling around in there, and as people enter that space, they do extraordinary things to them. And what I mean by that is ordinary is temptation. We get that cradle to grave. The extraordinary is the unusual stuff that you see in the movies, stuff flying around in shadows and whatnot. So the houses are most common. Animals are quite rare, but it does come up once in a while, more in terms of inciting them to fight each other or flee the home in order to just hurt the feelings of the family. And then the people is rare, and by rare I mean maybe one new real case in a year in a major city. So there's tons of people that think they're possessed, and there's an incredibly small number that actually are.
My second question is, when these demons or entities are cast out, where do they go? Are they sent back to hell? Do they jump into somebody else? Do they just hang around and wait for another open door?
Yeah, so the question is, where do they go when they're cast out? We don't have absolute certainty on that. We know that they're out of the person, and that's all the church cares about, is that you're out of the person. The authority seems to end there because it's no longer a concern. You're concerned about that person, and that person meaning a soul and a body, that's what you're concerned about. Now, anecdotally, what they will say, you have to be careful because these are demons, they lie, but what they will say is that they go back, they're punished by Satan for their failure, and then they're reassigned to new situations. Now, we do see the same spirits over and over in different cases down through the years, in different cities and different people. So there's some I've encountered so many times, as soon as it shows up, it's like, oh, it's this guy again. And he makes similar comments about me. Like snarky water cooler talk. It's very surreal being involved in this after a while.
After we started the show, why don't you share what
Which one?
a few of them said?
This show.
Yeah, the spirit world.
Well, in the beginning, they would make fun of the show and they would say, nobody's listening to you. Don't bother, nobody's listening. And then more recently, this was 2 weeks ago, they turned to one of the priests in the middle of the exorcism and they said, he's exposing too many of my friends to the people. And proceeded to trash talk a little bit.
I just wanted to jump in real quickly, and I know a lot of people are listening across the Guadalupe Radio Network and saying, this sounds like an unusual show. I've never heard this before. And I just want to remind everybody that this is a very special broadcast of the Guadalupe Radio Network. It's called The Spirit World Live, and it's the first time we've ever done this anywhere in the GRN. And we're live in Dallas at Jesuit College Preparatory School at the Terry Center. And we got a crowd of 400 wonderful friends and listeners here with us. And also here on stage, Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly, whose show typically airs on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And we are doing this evening, and we're so delighted. And we have a lot of folks lined up for questions. So with no further ado, we'll go ahead and get back to our next question. Thank you so much.
So last question. You talked about the demons inhabiting like certain areas, geographic areas. If you live in an area where there's lots of limestone and quartz, does that like keep them away, or is that like a draw in, or what?
Yeah, so all that's nonsense. That has nothing to do with anything. They don't care. There's no natural thing that affects them one way or the other. All they care about is us, in the sense that they hate God, but they can't strike out at God, but they can strike out at the image of God, and we're created in God's image. So that's what draws them, if anything, is that they have sour grapes. They can't make it back to heaven, but we can. And so we're what they're interested in, apparently.
Hello, my name is Carlos. Been listening to your show for quite a while. In fact, Debbie got me through my father passing away about 7 years ago on take 2, along with Jerry, right? And I've known Dave for quite a while, even though this is the first time we met. We usually text each other, or he helps me with special events. So thank you, Adam. It's good to see you as well. So I have 2 questions. I think one of them is probably for Debbie. But my question is regarding my guardian angel. When I pray the rosary, I have a list of folks and groups that I pray for. If I ask my guardian angel to access the other person's guardian angel, so that the 3 of us can pray for this person, whether they're in purgatory or needing help, is that possible for my guardian angel to be able to do that?
So thank you so much for those kind words, by the way, and listening to both shows. So thank you for that. So this idea of asking your guardian angel to communicate with somebody else's guardian angel and to have this kind of communication happening on the other side of the veil, based on many years of this precise studying of angels, and if you look at private revelation again with saints like Padre Pio and other saints that communicated quite often with their guardian angels, there's a whole network on the other side of the veil working. So they're communicating the same way we're communicating on this side. So it makes sense, right? If you acknowledge that your guardian angel has a mission given by God, and you acknowledge that, and you allow them to do their work, because they need to do their work, they committed to that. So based on what I know to be true about angels, it makes complete sense that they are communicating on their side, helping to inspire others, to illuminate people's minds, to strengthen their will, to stay very deep into their spiritual life of people we know and love. The network is working. If you just look at an LA freeway, just pretend you can elevate up to the sky 30,000 feet and look down at an LA freeway, and you see all the maneuvering going on. You have to imagine that the angels are working overtime to keep people safe, right? Isn't it true? Do you ever think about that? It's amazing how just one slight move and all the cars, you could be in a 9-car pileup, right? They're working on the other side of the veil. So in answer to that, when the angels know that you are praying deep from your heart for a reason, they will assist, and we know that from Saint Therese, the little flower, we know that from other saints. Now again, these are saints' stories, but they are the best adorers of God. They're beholding the face of God and ministering to us at the same time. So it's like a continual connection. And all the great saints knew that. All of them did. If you notice, they all had a close relationships with their guardian angels. And why is that? Because they understood God's mission. They understood the mission of the angels. They understood that they had a mission to fulfill. And when we enter into it, they are cooperating with that. So in answer to your question, God is a God of abundance. He wants lots of participation. So if you're asking the angels to participate in something that's good and holy, and it's God's will, of course they're going to participate. So does that kind of like answer? You always go big with God. Always. Go bigger and bigger and bigger with God.
Well, my guardian angel tends to help me with a lot of stuff. The only thing he hasn't helped me with is I've asked him, are you like 7 feet tall or are you like 2 feet tall? I guess he doesn't want me to know. I guess the next question is for you, Mr. Adam. With the counterculture, the way it's going, my concern is a bit personal because I have 3 sons, 32, 36, and 37, I think. Gabe is 37. But anyway, my question is aligned with the counterculture. I'm concerned a lot of young people, especially starting like from California, moving this way, and it's been going on for a while, are very involved in yoga. And I know that yoga has not been officially nixed by the Catholic Church yet my question is there a propensity for that kind of practice to lead into some kind of negative mysticism or some bad consequences with demonology?
Sure. So I'm glad you brought up a totally non-controversial and, not going to cause any kind of argument or conflict at all. So I had a friend, Father Rufus Pereira, who was a Roman Catholic priest, exorcist from India, lived in Mumbai, and was casting out Hindu gods from people since the early 70s. And they would strike the yoga poses that they were associated with during the exorcisms. So I'm not saying people that do yoga are possessed, but here's a few quick things you need to understand about yoga. Is you are taking part of a religious system of worship of pagan gods out of context and doing it as a form of exercise. Secondly, if you just do the physical part, you probably will be fine, but it's a slippery slope. And almost inevitably, people get interested in the mysticism part of it, in the mantras, in the manipulation of energy. A guest teacher comes in and teaches you about, some more esoteric practice, and it slowly progresses. The one area that's super clear in yoga is Kundalini yoga, and you can later on go to YouTube and type in Kundalini dangers and see various documentaries about this. And the quick version of that is they believe that there's a spirit of a serpent at the base of the spine of every human being that can be awakened through yogic practices that will move up the spine, eventually reach the crown chakra here, at which point the sign of your wonderful Kundalini awakening, sarcasm off, and I'm not disrespecting yoga, but Kundalini yoga is it's a real problem. So the signs of that awakening is what they call kriyas, which are involuntary body jerks and movements and animal-like vocalizations. And most of the people that have had a Kundalini awakening that I've researched have all said they usually spend about 2 years of their life recovering from it with tremendous negative psychological fallout. So if you want to stretch. And if you say, well, no, it has to be yoga, well, then you're really saying, I want to get my spiritual itch scratched there. because there's plenty of stretching available and exercise available. And if you insist that it has to be yoga, that it has to be pagan worship postures, you have to be honest with yourself. You're saying, I want some spiritual experience there. Those are my thoughts.
Hi, I'm Lex. No intro. I was just wondering, does the Catholic Church study/recognize the apocryphal? If not, what does it recognize for a demonology study?
You mean like apocryphal books? I mean, they're there if you're approaching it from a scholarly standpoint. In terms of pure academic scholarship, they're there. They're not regarded as canon. Honestly, they're not useful. They're not going to add anything useful. So the thing that most people are interested in are the first and second Enoch, typically, or the Jewish Book of the Giants, or the Jewish Book of Jasher, I believe, or I think it's Jasher. But mainly Enoch is the thing that gets a lot of airtime. It doesn't add anything to your understanding of the fallen angels. It just adds a lot of weird stuff that is kind of a rabbit hole that doesn't pay off. And trust me, I've read like Nickelberg's translation, which is the scholarly, this thick, phone book thick academic translation of it with commentary. It doesn't add anything. And I say that as the person, who goes to exorcisms every Friday for 15 years and has worked with everybody from Father Amorth over in Rome, learning from him, not worked with, but learning from him and the old guys in Rome. You don't need that stuff. So a religious demonologist really means that you understand these creatures enough to kind of be helpful in the church opposing them. You're not interested in like the old Jewish lists of names. It becomes almost like, it becomes the occult. It almost becomes like black magic when you go down that road too far. All you care about is helping this person and getting this filthy creature away from them. And so getting into their world too much, it's unhealthy. And I think that's why the church has stayed away from a lot of the apocryphal stuff, because it doesn't help you, and it takes you to a dark place in your thinking and your spirituality.
Oh, what books do you study for demonology then? Besides just like, the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, there's no degree for this. You can't go to school for it unless you're talking about an advanced degree in Rome, and that's going to be really limited. It's not something a student can go sign up for. You learn more by being mentored by the experienced people. So you can read all the books on exorcism that are available to the public, and there may be a half of the information that is actually out there, but it's passed on verbally from teacher to student down through the generations. It's an oral tradition. And there's a reason we don't put a lot of the serious information in the public forum, because people would then think they can go do this on their own and play around with it and end up getting really hurt or really bad outcomes. And so the exorcist community, there's a lot of detailed stuff that's really ugly, and honestly, you don't want to know. It's just going to make you feel awful to know it, and it's not going to help you. I think, would rather you focus on Christ and your journey towards God instead of studying these creatures. We only understand them in order to help people get free of them. We're not interested in them as a cool thing to study. So I don't know if that helps.
Hi, Debbie. Can you please put us in your prayer book?
Absolutely.
Thank you. What do you think of the ritual Crowley did in the Boleskine house that took 6 months? 72 Goetia demons, King Solomon reign.
So, okay, so you're referencing Crowley stuff on the Loch Ness, in the house he had on the Loch Ness. All right, so a lot of people don't even know what the question is referencing. Aleister Crowley is probably the most famous black magician in Western civilization. He's been on the cover of a Beatles album, and he's referenced in many different rock and roll songs. Really horrible individual that explicitly advocated child sacrifice as the best source of spiritual power in writing in his books, though people like to argue that away and claim it was not really about that. Was a drug addict, was involved in abusing children in a way that I believe it was Italy barred him from ever entering the country again. So pretty monstrous individual. He did a number of rituals trying to bring about the end times. He wanted to be known as the Beast 666, that kind of stuff. Really dark guy. So he did a bunch of crazy stuff, a house on Loch Ness that he bought and he owned for a little while, and then Jimmy Page bought it later and had it for a little while. I don't know if Jim Page still owns it. Here's the bottom line with demons and goetic magic and all that stuff. The demons couldn't care less what you draw on the floor. They couldn't care less how you wiggle your fingers or what words you read out of a book. None of that has any power over them. They make fun of people that do that. Like when people come in for exorcisms that are like Satanists or involved in black magic, when the demon takes over the body, they will often make snide comments to us like, "Do you believe this one? He fell for it too." To us, because they know we know what's going on. All of that, for them, is just a submission of your will. You're showing submission of will and a request to them for a favor. That's all they care about. Because then they can go to God and say, he asked for me, he asked for a favor from me, I want access to him. Okay? Doesn't matter if you do it with Egyptian magic, Crowley's magic, Wicca, doesn't matter. They don't care. Nor does it change the outcome. So basically, I really think Crowley was a mess. I think he did a lot of harm to a lot of people. The demons certainly messed with him. My guess would be is that, there's little doubt he was possessed, because I think he wanted to be possessed. There are people that want that. So yeah, black magic is basically a sham. And he was doing whatever he was doing and making up rituals there. The house, based on what he did, was almost certainly demonically infested. I don't know if it's ever been exorcised and blessed, but he certainly did enough that that house is troubled.
And I was listening to your radio program last Saturday, and you said that you couldn't speak about the torture that possessed individuals undergo because it would damage imagination. But I think
We didn't hear the end of that. I just,
I think the mic just stopped working there. Okay, so I'm not sure where the question was going, but there are, there's certain things you can't unhear. Have you ever seen something in a movie that was so shocking and horrible that it's still stuck with you, almost like a flashbulb memory? There are some things that just describing it to you wounds you. I worked in prison for a number of years, including with a lot of inmates that had done really terrible crimes, and doing group therapy and individual therapy and hearing the descriptions of what they did wounds you in the sense that it's almost like a secondary trauma. And the demons are worse than people. And so there are certain things that I will never repeat that they have done to people because it would traumatize you to hear it. It would bother you. And it becomes, it's not healthy. It's so ugly, it's not healthy. And trust me, you don't want to know. Like you might think you want to know, like, oh, you have a morbid curiosity, but you don't want to know. It's just awful. Yeah.
These have been great questions so far. I just want to remind everybody who is listening to us on the radio across the Guadalupe Radio Network that this is a live broadcast that we're doing here in Dallas, Texas, with a live studio audience of about 400 people at the Jesuit College Preparatory School. And this is the Spirit World Live. It's a special broadcast here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. The questions have been just awesome so far. We've about halfway through the program so far, and we're live. And here on the stage with us, Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly. And there's our Spirit World Live program. Airs every Saturday at 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And let's just keep on rolling. And so, yeah.
Just going back to the question right before about the books that you can read, we recommend this book on the spirit world, and oftentimes we're a live call-in show. So please call in if you have a question and pass the information to a friend if they have something to ask, because a lot of people feel like they don't have access to their parish to ask these questions, and they just feel like it's a good platform. So please spread the word. But going back to learning more about angels and demons, we recommend the book, Joan Carroll Cruz's book, Angels and Devils. She did a really good foundational understanding. She brings in a lot of St. Thomas Aquinas. Dave's very familiar with that because he's an expert in the Summa, and she did a great job. 3/4 of the book is about angels, so it's a wonderful book, and 1/4 is the devils and the demons. But you learn an understanding without all the gore and detail like that. And then Adam is so humble, but he recently wrote a book called The Exorcist Files. You did? Yes, he did. It's an excellent book. So if you would like to know more about that world of exorcism ministry work, Adam cited cases and went through some detail, and he did it in such I think, a kind of a clinical way, and it's easy to understand without it leaving us, with these images that we can't, work with. So I would recommend that. So The Exorcist Files is through Sophia Press, I think. Sophia Press. And then Joan Carroll Cruz's Angels and Devils, if you want to get an understanding. Okay.
Hi, my name is Darlene, and I want to thank you for having this show. And my question was, can you ask your deceased loved ones to go with you to daily mass?
Okay. No, would be the short answer, I think. So here's the thing. When we die, we're before Jesus, right? To be out of the body is to be with the Lord. We're judged. Heaven, hell, or purgatory from there. If you're in heaven, you're a saint. Could they go with you? Go ahead.
So you wouldn't want to ask your deceased loved ones to attend with you, because that's a communication that could be an unhealthy type of communication. However, your loved ones who are baptized and are now in eternity, in eternal life, they're alive with more in Christ during Mass than ever before. So you are intimately connected in a spiritual way with your loved ones at Mass. Mm-hmm. That's what, across the board, we've always taught that in religious education. So in essence, if they're with God, they're there. They're alive in Christ. So they're there. But to ask them to attend with you is, I think, a relationship situation that could be problematic.
So they're in the heavenly liturgy. If they're in the beatific vision, they're participating in the heavenly version of the Mass, which is a much fuller version that we can't even fully comprehend. And so in parallel, you could think of them while you're participating in Mass, that they're participating in the divine praises and in a way that's wonderful in parallel. You wouldn't want to ask them to come down and kind of manifest or be near you. Souls in purgatory and purgatory, they wouldn't really come to Mass, so they can benefit from Mass. They benefit from the sacrifice of the Mass. There's graces in the Mass that they benefit from if you pray for them, right? So pray for them during Mass for sure. And of course, if you're damned, you're damned. You don't want to,
But again, think of it like this. You remember Dr. Scott Hahn's book where he talks about the Mass and the Lamb's Supper. Thank you. And the heaven and earth, I mean, it's together. It's tight. So think of it, when you're thinking of Mass, think of all of the communion of saints and the angels, all there converging. Think of the roof of the church being lifted off and all of heaven descends. It's very powerful. And you do?
Thank you. I really do think that way. And anyway, but I started saying, okay, come on, we're going to Mass. Come on, Michael and Angela. And then I thought, I shouldn't be saying that. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to ask.
Good evening. My name is Anne. I have a question about how demons might interact with us, just everyday folks who aren't playing with Ouija boards and tarot cards and that sort of thing. C.S. Lewis wrote the Screw Tape Letters, and he writes a lot about how a demon might make you hungry in the middle of a prayer. Or I even wondered about the interference with the microphones earlier. Can you speak just a little bit about how demons might interfere with just us everyday Catholics just trying to grow closer to our Lord?
Sure. Okay. Thomas Aquinas gives us some guidance on the ordinary activity, and that is to activate a memory. So let's say I had a great apple yesterday. It was juicy and amazing, and I remember eating that apple. And today, it pops into my head, and I remember how good that is. And then my passions are excited. So the demon can do two things to tempt us: activate a memory, and then excite the passions to encourage us to go do that sin again. Okay? That's the limit of what they can do in their ordinary activity. They can't affect the body beyond that in the ordinary activity. So that's kind of the limit of what they can do if you're in a state of grace and living a decent life and not opening the door to them. Now, don't get freaked out by that. They've been doing that our whole lives. It's like learning about bacteria exists. Like, ooh, it's everywhere and it can affect me. But then we get over it and we realize it's always been there. So it's kind of like that. Does that help at all? Okay. And the other aspect that is important that Deb was bringing up to me that we wanted to touch on at some point is one of the big things our culture is promoting right now is paranormal investigating and ghost hunting. And it is normalizing an interaction with spirits that is not healthy or allowed. So necromancy, by definition, biblically, is calling the dead to talk to them. So literally, give me a sign of your presence, speak in this recorder, make this flashlight turn on and off. That is calling the dead and looking for a manifestation, which is different than a poor soul in purgatory appearing to a priest and saying, I need masses. That's something God is sending. It's when we call the dead. It is forbidden, and it's described as abhorrent to God, and that He'll turn His face away from you and cut you off from His people for doing it. And we promote it on TV as something fun and cool. So for a lot of people, they have opened the door to extraordinary interactions where the demon has more access to them to do things to their body and oppress them or obsess them. That is becoming normalized. And some of these shows, they even want to be scratched or punched, and they're looking for violent manifestations and interactions with these things because they think they'll get attention for having gone through that. Yeah, there's just a few of these doors that are... Go ahead. Oh, Deb wanted to mention about the demons can't read your mind. A lot of people, for some reason, have a lot of anxiety about this question. Probably because we all have internal kind of thoughts that we're embarrassed of that kind of just happen spontaneously through the day. That's part of being human. It's part of our psychology. And we don't want to imagine anything can listen in on that because we would be embarrassed, I think is the reason we're uncomfortable with that. But pretty consistently, I would say, I think Aquinas addresses this. I know some of the other writers that have looked at this have concluded they can't read your mind. So it's one thing to activate a memory, because if you were sinning, they were almost certainly there. So they remember the sin, and they can kind of remind you of it. But that's not them reading your memory and saying, oh, I see he had an apple yesterday. Let's remind him about that. It's that they were there enticing me to eat the apple yesterday, you see. So don't worry about them having too much access to you. But the temptation's allowed because it makes us stronger. By having the struggle in life, we gain in wisdom and maturity. We learn by making mistakes.
Hi, my name is Jean Paul. Sorry. And growing up, I used to have dreams about Saint Michael the Archangel handing me a sword to join the spiritual battle. And I guess my question is, what would you say is the significance of demons and angels appearing in our dreams, and what should we take away from this?
Appearing in your dreams. You have to be really careful with dreams. So the human psyche is very powerful, and if you're reading about and focused on and like thinking about these things, there's a good chance you're going to dream about them. Now, it is possible to have dreams that are kind of something from God. You know, biblically, we know that prophets either had visions or dreams where God spoke to them. We know, of course, Joseph famously had a visit from an angel that gave him direction. It's tough to discern that easily and tell you for sure whether these dreams are spiritual or not. The thing I would advise you to do, if you think they are, go to your priest, ask for an appointment, sit down and talk and get some guidance from a priest who maybe knows you a little bit, and follow their advice. Submit it to the church. You're submitting it to authority, a spiritual authority. If you can get a spiritual director, it's hard to find one these days, but a spiritual director can be good too. But I would caution you that almost always dreams are just dreams. So unless there's other extraordinary things going on in your life, I would lean towards it's just a dream, but take it to your priest.
Just want to cut in real quickly here again. We're now at 7:45 Central Time or 9 Eastern Time, and we're broadcasting live, Terry Center and Jesuit. Thanks to everybody who's listening across the Guadalupe Radio Network. And if you're in line, we're going to get to your question. We may not be able to get to all of them live on the radio because at 8 o'clock Central Time, we've got to cut it off. But if you're in line, we'll ask them after the live broadcast, but we will say only the people who are in line at the time. So we are looking at about 14 minutes more of live radio broadcasting. Thanks again for all the questions. They've been outstanding. And we'll go now to our next question.
Hi, my name's Michelle, and I want to thank you for your show and taking my question. My question is, can you please explain the difference between possession and oppression?
Sure. So the church classically defines kind of more or less 3 levels of demonic problems that are extraordinary. So again, the ordinary is temptation, extraordinary is demonic infestation. That means they're rattling around in a house, allowed to do extraordinary things. There's oppression, which is sometimes translated obsession, sometimes people say vexation. All that means is an attack on the person. So an extraordinary attack on an individual. So if it's an infestation, while I'm in the house, I'm being bothered. If it's oppression, it's me. So wherever I go, I'm being bothered because the thing is attacking me personally, and there's some level of relationship that's been established where it can do that. The goal of the oppression is to wear the person down to the point that they submit to possession or suicide. So possession then is when the person gives over, that you have authority over your own body, I have authority over mine, exercising that authority and giving it over to the demon and allowing them to take over the body and use it as their own. That's what possession is. Now, a few things in there that goes back to Thomas. Your reason, your choices can never be touched, and your soul can never be touched. The body can be possessed, but your mind, your ability to choose and say no, can never be taken away from you because your free will is so important to God, and your soul belongs to God. So that can never be possessed or taken away. So even if a person dies in a state of possession, they just go to their judgment like anybody else. Okay? So, possession is a serious thing, but the movies make it out to be kind of a guaranteed damnation or something like that. It's not at all. Does that help?
Can I just share something real quickly, Sean, for a moment? The question that we had about the dreams of angels and maybe some demons, who was that person that there you go. If you can't get, this is just not sitting well with me. If you can't get an appointment with your parish priest yet, I would highly recommend, just so you have a peaceful night's sleep, if something you may be anxious about something or something that you have a lot of things going on in life or whatever, I would recommend getting a St. Benedict medal and having it blessed and wearing it. And then Adam talks a lot about holy water. Because it didn't feel right, because typically, especially if you're having dreams about angels, that's one thing. Maybe you're just, thinking of heavenly angels and something like that. But if it's going kind of back and forth, or you've had it for quite some time, it just something may spiritually not be comfortable for you. And so sacramentals can really assist in that area.
Yeah, so get some holy water from your local Catholic church, put a little bit in your palm, rub your hands together, close your eyes and pat your whole head down, okay, your eyes, your ears, your whole head, right before you lay down to go to sleep, all right? If the dreams are coming from a bad spiritual source, that will stop them on a dime for that night, okay? And I've used this in many, many cases over the years. Every single time it works. So that can be a litmus test to test whether it's coming from a bad spiritual source. Now, your mind might just not dream that night, so you got to be careful about concluding it's a causative relationship. So keep doing it for a while, especially if it's something bad or questionable.
Wearing sacramentals they're just very powerful. Adam talks about it a lot, and he really, I think, assists all of us when we're listening to the show about with our faith. It actually strengthens us, but with our faith, it builds the efficacy with the amount of faith we have. And so that's very important. See, again, there's this participation for us to have a very rich spiritual life. So I just wanted to encourage you. I hope that helps. Did that help? Yeah? Okay, good.
Hi, this question is for Adam. I'm interested because you have the background in psychology. I just wanted to ask you to comment on the proliferation of transgenderism in our society, homosexuality, even kids identifying as the opposite gender of their biological sex. Have any demons revealed being directly involved in this, or is this just a result of cultural pressure, peer pressure, whatever, psychological? Just wanted to get your comments on that.
Well, it's good that tonight's been, non-controversial and low-key and light. It's really been kind of a light evening. Basically the answer is yes. It's such a difficult thing without being dragged into kind of a culture war. But yes, they have been proud and bragging about celebrations of these things going on in the city during sessions, and when those things are being celebrated, they're very happy about that. They're proud about that. That's not me making a judgment about LGBTQ things. I'm just reporting to you that the bad guys seem to love this stuff. You can make any conclusions you choose to make from that, because I don't want to be dragged into, I'm not making judgments about people myself. But yes, downstairs is very keen on those agendas and of going down that road. It's difficult.
Why don't you talk about this, about how the demons will always reverse everything that God has that's holy and good and godly. Mm-hmm. They try to change it and twist it.
Yeah, so in general, when you're dealing with the devil or the fallen angels that follow him, they're not creative creatures. All they do is they look at what God has done, and they do a perverted version of that. They don't come up with something new. So anything they do, if you think about it for a minute, you realize, oh, that's a perverted version of marriage, or that's a perverted version of the Mass, or that's et cetera, et cetera. There's a reason certain symbols within Satanism have both genders in them, because the devil is interested in smashing the family primarily, because the family is the crucible through which culture is refined and passed on. And so if gender can be destroyed, it's more likely that that marriage can be destroyed and the bringing about of children can be harmed, and confusion can be injected into the place where culture is kind of reinforced and passed on. So in that sense, anything that God has done, they're going to try to corrupt it and distort it and divide it, if that helps.
I'm just going to cut in right here. We've got 5 minutes remaining, so I think probably this is going to be the last question we'll be able to ask on the live radio show. But as I mentioned, the end of the line, we will get to everybody. So I'm looking at the lady with the green sweater there. Unless anybody else jumps in, you'll be the last. But if you have any questions, jump in right now because we're going to have to cut it off. So, all right, Javier, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
All right. Hi, my name is Javier. Excuse me. So do you recommend having your home, business, or land blessed? And would that be enough, or do you have to have it checked to see if it might need a exorcism? I mean, know that.
Well, I'm really not being facetious about this, but one of the number one questions we get at the spirit world is people think like their spouse is possessed. It's hilarious. They'll call us.
Or my 16-year-old is
Yeah,
possessed.
yeah. They'll say, my husband's just not acting right. Is he possessed? I mean, it is hilarious. So but it's a common feeling, like you just always jump to that extreme. But yeah, let Adam share about blessings. I'm a big believer in house blessings, huge believer in having everything blessed.
So we know that we live in a fallen creation, right, that's been tainted by original sin. So the default assumption is things are tainted by original sin. So we want to sanctify or bless anything that we have authority over, because that's going to make being there, using those things more positive and conducive to everything good. You only need an exorcism of a house or a land if there's extraordinary activities that are being observed there. And then the priest is the one that kind of needs to see that and determine that that's necessary, because then he has to go to the bishop and say, I need permission to do this exorcism of this building. And the bishop's going to want to know why. So it's not as simple as you saying, get over here and do this, right? I wouldn't be anxious about, something spooky happened or something fell and I can't explain it. Maybe it's a demon. I need an exorcism in the house. It takes pretty extraordinary stuff to warrant doing a house exorcism. They do happen, but bless things all the time. Bless vehicles, bless the home. Another tip, in addition to the holy water patting down your head before you go to sleep if you suffer from these nightmares, another tip that you can take from tonight is the Epiphany blessing of the threshold is incredibly powerful. The chalk writing over the door, the 4 crosses, CMB, and then the year, unbelievable. I don't have time to get into the stories, but it's amazing. Okay, and I've seen it play out in a number of different situations.
And you got to do it every year, and you wipe off, and you have to have a blessed chalk, and you do it properly, say the blessing, and say the prayer, and I can attest to that it's very powerful.
Yeah, so definitely do that.
All right, and I can attest to the fact that we are running out of time, okay? I just want to say, first of all, thank you very much to Debbie Georgiani and Adam Bly. Hasn't it been an awesome time? We've got, and I also want to thank you all for coming. It's so awesome. We want to do this across the network, and we wanted to see how is it going to go over in Dallas. And we are so blessed to have the very before you. But everybody up until the lady with the white sweater in the back, your question will get answered after the fact, okay? And so I just, again, want to thank you all. I want to thank everybody who's listening. We actually got a couple of questions on YouTube that are going to be answered as well. So everybody out there in social media land, thank you very much for watching and this as well. And don't forget, if you like this, don't forget to tune in 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, every Saturday morning for the Spirit World Live. And also, as if that isn't enough, every Monday through Friday during Morning Joy, the next right thing with these two wonderful people from 6:15 to 6:45. So we're so blessed to have so much. And so anyways, thanks everybody for listening or being here. And of course, if you're here live with us, we're going to get at least another 30 minutes. And then also Debbie will be available for some private questions, and Adam will be available with his relic afterwards as well. So thank you, and I think we're off the air.